Okay, folks, I want to call the Hopkinton Town Council meeting of July 15, 2019 to order with a moment of silent meditation and salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Move that we sit as a licensing board.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you. First up, multi-event permit. Open a hearing on an application for a multi-event permit for a series of 3 free music in the Valley concerts filed by Christine Anderson on behalf of the Friends of the Hopkinton Land Trust, scheduled for Saturday, July 13, 2019, Saturday, August 10, 2019, and Saturday, September 14, 2019, from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. to be held at Depot Square Park, 1 Mechanic Street, Hope Valley, Rhode Island, identified as Assessor's Plat 27, Lot 176. The applicant present? Allison, Chris. You're supposed to be here.
Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, yeah.
During the meeting?
Yeah, well, maybe. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
And it actually,
That's my last.
I guess it is after 7. I'll move that we adjourn as a licensing board and we convene the council. So I go back to it.
Yeah. Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Consent agenda, approved town council meeting minutes of July 1st, 2019, except the July 1st, 2019 transcript as a record of the zoning ordinance text amendment. Hearing filed by Norbert Ensay Jr. regarding 999 Main Street, set August 5th, 2019 is a hearing date for a special event permit filed by the Holly Tree Campground, except the following monthly financial activity report, town clerk.
I ask that the town council meetings of July 1st, 2019 be removed,
The transfer?
the meeting and the transcript both.
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda as read without reading minutes of July 1st and the transcript record of July 1st.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, on the July 1st, 2019, I believe Councilor Cataldo made a motion to adjourn
What page is that, Scott?
the last page 5 on July 1st. I didn't make the motion to adjourn in memory of Felicina Crina, and I believe Saga did. But for the record, that should be changed. And did you second?
I have another correction.
No, I'm talking about July 1st, 2019.
Oh,
Last one.
excuse me? Oh, the,
We're talking about July 1st,
Yes.
2019,
Yes.
page 5,
yes.
bottom, adjournment. Who seconded that? I didn't
It was
second. You did, okay.
Council.
Okay, with the change of Bob Cataldo, so myself, I move these be the minutes of that meeting with that correction.
A second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
The other thing is, I didn't read the whole transcript, but and I don't know if it really should be corrected, but my name is Hirst, H-I-R-S-T, and obviously, maybe it's the way it's pronounced, people will say Hirsch, like the jury, like Larry Hirsch and Sam Hirsch that ran Wesley Jury, which is H-I-R-S-C-H. I don't know if that be corrected, because usually the stenographer submits the record in, and she's a notary, but I don't know if that correction should be made or not, especially in the transcript.
I would think so.
What page, Scott?
I don't know how many times it appears, but.
I do. It's page 13, number 9, page 14, number 24.
So if we can make that correction.
The other correction is, if you look on page 5 of the transcript,
Yep.
and page 7, the attorney in the first, let's see, in page 5, the last paragraph, it says, as we suggest to your zoning board. He did say zoning board, but he meant the planning board. just, it'll be in our minutes of tonight. And then the same thing occurred on page 7, where we referred to the zoning board and you meant the planning board. But we did say zoning board. That's all.
While you were on that, on page 8, just where you were, is that where, line 17, was Rexall Pharmacy, it says that's the color it came from, is that the right word?
Yeah,
It is
that's what I said.
color?
Yeah.
Color, yeah.
Okay.
Rexall Pharmacy had a blue and an orange.
Okay,
So that's what I was referring to.
okay, thank you.
I make a motion to approve the transcript of July 1st, 2019 with the corrections.
A second.
Okay, motion made in second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Okay, first public forum.
Carol Rogers, Pleasant View Drive. With regards to granting a request to yet again reschedule the hearing for the zoning ordinance and comp plan future land use map amendments for 0 Main Street, I'm asking that you do not grant this request. This matter dates back 8 months, and these continual delays wear residents down and create confusion when the hearings will actually occur. I remember a resident trying to speak on this application back on November 19th, becoming extremely frustrated and walking out. There have been 6 scheduled dates and 5 cancellations out of those 6. So please pull the plug and end that game. A number of residents are hoping that there aren't some considerations occurring behind the scenes, since this is the same developer as Hopkinton.
Anyone else?
Joe Moreau, Old Depot Road. You know, I realize it's a public forum, we probably can't have a lot of conversation about this, about common circuit, so.
We'll talk offline. I got some things.
Okay, thank you. I know I spoke to Sherry, and she was very helpful about it also. The Skunk Hill Road meeting on June 10th, there was a list of items, whether it was demands or requests, but there was reference to golf cart, reference to the Gardner property for $380,000. Again, I know you can't answer this, but I'd like to get an answer somehow on what is the status of that list. How can I get answers to those questions, and who can tell me what was approved? Was the Gardner property approved, for example? Was the golf cart approved?
I can let you know after the meeting.
Okay, thank you. Atlantic Solar, I'm not going to get into this because Carol mentioned it, but of the last 6 meetings, 5 were canceled. The July meeting was also canceled. So from what I understand, because the meeting was canceled, and Lisa can correct me if I'm wrong, the notification process has to start all over again. The certified mail, the abutters list, because it's not like we went to this meeting and the meeting was rescheduled. They canceled that meeting. So I'm under the impression that we have to go through the entire steps again. One thing I had spoken to Sherry about today was kind of ties in with Palmer Circle. My suggestion would be is on the application that is initially filled out, if we had a question on there, not a question, but if we had a statement that outlined what the guidelines are. Sherry and her department is all over work now, and for her to go back and look at all the minutes of the meeting to see if that was brought up at the hearing, the possibility of just outlining it. If it's Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 and no weekends, if that's clearly on the application, I think it'd be a lot easier for the town employees to go back and refer to that document. As I said, Skunk Hill was approved on June 10th. It was approved to amend the comp plan and the zone changes. I know the transcripts were available for what I was told 2 weeks ago. And my question is, and then we can talk about this after, is when will the text for those 2 ordinance changes be available to the public to take a look at that? Last point is Woodville Road project. The planning board vote was 2-2. As the town solicitor reminded the planning board that they required 3 affirmative votes So therefore, the project did not pass. The attorney developers had asked for an advisory opinion that the project was consistent with the comp plan, which it wasn't. It's the 22.4 acre parcel. It was well over the 3% cap. They asked for it to be allowed, and also the claim was that the ordinance was improperly worded by the planning board, and that issue they would consider a waiver on it. But it didn't pass, so it was a 2-2 vote. So, and this is from the minutes of the meeting. I don't understand why this project is going forward. I know it's on the agenda tonight to reschedule the project, but it should be under the 3% maximum for that. When I looked at the meeting, minutes for the meeting, it says, the ordinance says that if a parcel is successfully rezoned and the planning board is silent on this issue or votes against the rezone, then the 3% or 3 acre limit remains in place. And my impression was of this whole solar ordinance that you guys worked so hard on, that this was part of the process, was to eliminate a lot of these projects before they take up your time, everyone else's time and money. And it appears to me that it does fall under the 3%, so I don't understand why we would go forward with any project, not only that one, but if it's within that 3% and they're asking for more, that's the whole point. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay. Next up under my report, just a quick item so the council's aware. I've been contacted over the years about a possibility of a townwide shred day, working with Bill, McGarry, and trying to see if we can make it happen. I think all of us can appreciate a lot of mounting paperwork, personal and business, that it could probably be shredded someday, and it just might make things easier for us and the residents. Still very preliminary. We don't know what the cost would be, how often, what kind of parameters would set forth, but I think it's a good idea. It's at least worth exploring. So that's what we're doing at this point. So anyway, heads up on that. First up on the old business, further discuss and possibly vote to render a decision regarding a zoning ordinance text amendment by Norbert Ansay Jr., 63 Cedarwood Lane, Hope Valley, Rhode Island, 02832, for property he owns located at 999 Main Street, identified as Assessor's Plat 27, Lot 102, a neighborhood business zone. The applicant requests a zoning ordinance text amendment to the Chapter 134 District Use Table to adopt use category 761 Art Gallery Studio to be permitted in a neighborhood business zone and in aquifer protection areas based on types of materials and supplies utilized. The proposal to adopt use category 762 Art Studio Gallery has been sent back to the planning board for further study. The hearing was held on July 1st, 2019. Okay, the applicant's here and his attorney. We have the planner, Jim, in case anybody has any last minute questions or concerns from the council. From what I gather from the last meeting, the hearing, we seem to be in agreement with a non-caustic use, but not the caustic use. Because we, I think, agreed to send that back to the planning board for further study and the manufacturing aspect too. So, anyway, does anyone have any further comments on
Well, I'd
this?
like to start. As I mentioned at the hearing, I am in favor of this, and what I did do was write up what I thought. I'm not saying what I thought we agreed to, because we don't make motions that night. But what I did do was I provided the council with the district use category, in which it breaks out, removes use category 76 as they proposed, and creates two new categories, 761 Art Gallery Studio that's non-caustic, non-hazardous, and then 762, which is an art gallery studio, which would use caustic or hazardous materials. And what I did do was I put in the district use table what I believe the planning board wanted, and that was, as I just mentioned they're both broken out. But for the non-caustic, non-hazardous material, allowing it by special use permit in both of these in an RFR 80, not in residential 1, in neighborhood business, allowing it in both sections, but special use permit, and not in commercial, not in manufacturing. And I put ends there because it may or may not be good in commercial manufacturing, but nobody asked for that. The planning board didn't deal with it, so I just left it as it was. But I asked Lisa to get this, and Jim Lanford had his zoning book with him, and I understand that there might be a little pushback on requiring a special use permit in a neighborhood business for this art studio if it's not using caustic or hazardous materials. So what I will say is, I talked to Al Diori when he explained about the special use permits, and right out of our zoning, a special use permit, you have to go before the zoning board, and the zoning board is required to satisfy by legal competent evidence that the proposed uses and/or structure, number one, will be compatible with the neighborhood uses and will not adversely affect the surrounding neighbor's use and enjoyment of the property, will be environmentally compatible with neighborhood properties and the protection of property values, will be compatible with the orderly growth and development of the town, and will not be environmentally detrimental. And that all best practices and procedures to minimize the possibility of any adverse effects on the neighborhood property, the town, the environment have been considered and will be employed, including but not limited to the consideration of soil erosion, water supply protection, septic disposal, wetland protection, traffic limitations, safety, circulation. So they deal with all of those. And that the purposes of this ordinance as set forth in the comprehensive plan shall be served by said special use permit. So that's what the special use permits are about, and that's why I thought this is something that once we approve this would be allowed in all neighborhood business. Anybody who's got a neighborhood business would be allowed to do this, and because we're not looking at all of those sites, we're just looking at this one. It may be important that it's a special use permit, just so all of these things can be looked at to make sure they don't fly in the face of the local neighborhood properties or have any difficulties with them. So that was why I wrote up things the way I did on this memo. So,
I didn't think we agreed yet on
I'm sorry, I
762.
can't hear you.
I didn't think we agreed yet on 762.
We did.
So,
Correct.
I don't think we
Correct.
Yeah, I also would like to take 762 completely out of our discussion. As far as 761, I disagree with Councilor Thompson on neighborhood business and commercial, because I think an art gallery and studio that does not use, has non-caustic, non-hazardous materials should be permitted by right, because these are, art galleries and studios are all through the New England area. And these small galleries are in everything from residential areas to neighborhood business to commercial areas. And I believe that we should not put stumbling blocks in the way of the artists in Hopkinton, Richmond, Charleston, so that it becomes even more difficult to have a gallery. Because a special use permit entails a great deal of money. It doesn't just entail time. And I think these small galleries and studios that support children, teaching, you're just a normal human being who wants to learn how to paint or learn how to do something with fabric should not be jumping through hoops. I think that both neighborhood business and commercial, they should be permitted as they have non-caustic material. I certainly would agree with Councilor Thompson that the neighborhood business and commercial should be special use permits and possibly even manufacturing on 762, which is the caustic side, that I hope you do not bring up this evening, but leave it back with the planning board. So I would disagree because I think you're putting more roadblocks in the way of small business. And these are very small businesses. And you're causing them to have to put out a great deal of money for something that is a common use. It is non-caustic. It doesn't affect our septic systems or our water. So I would like to see the 761 Art Gallery Studio to stay as RFR 80. It's a special use permit because that would be a farming area. Residential not permitted. Neighborhood business and commercial, I would like to see it permitted. Manufacturing certainly not permitted. I don't want children around manufacturing areas. And the primary and secondary aquifer would be permitted use. I just don't think that we need to, as a town, put more hurdles in front of a small business owner. And these are very small businesses.
I talked to Mr. DiOrio, and he wanted to reiterate that he wanted special use
Yes,
or none for the neighborhood business, and I would support him on that. I would not want it to be just clinical.
Scott, you have anything?
But I not only talked to Mr. Dior at his house, and we had a talk, and I go along with the sentiments echoed by my honorable colleague Sharon Davis.
I also talked to Al. We had a discussion, and I agree that it's town-wide, not just site-specific for this particular decision, but it's, according to the planning board, it conforms to the comp plan. I disagree with Al's assessment on special use permit. I think it should be a P. And for reasons based on the transcript that our planner had mentioned, there were several businesses that already have a P and permitted in neighborhood business. Retail drug stores, liquor stores, antique stores, secondhand clothing and shoes, secondhand furniture, secondhand books and stationery stores, sporting goods and bicycle shops, farm and garden supply stores, jewelry stores, fuel and ice dealers, florists, tobacco stores, news dealers and newsstands, camera and photo supply stores, gift, novelty, and souvenir shops and optical goods stores, all with a P in neighborhood business and do not require a special use permit. So I disagree with Al's assessment, although it is town-wide. Certainly an art studio gallery is not any more noxious than any of these businesses at all. I totally disagree.
Well, I'm sorry.
So-
I say the businesses that you listed are all,
Permitted.
I know, but I mean, they're just buying product and putting it in your store to sell, resell, for resale. Most of the things that you listed, that they're not messing with it, they're not creating anything.
It's water-based paint, Jack.
I understand, but.
Well, let me finish my point.
Okay.
I let everyone talk. So again, it makes absolutely no sense that it should be a special use permit, in my opinion. Okay? And we certainly, at our last hearing, when we all discussed this, it was my opinion, based on the transcript and what transpired, that we were all in agreement with it being permitted in a non-caustic situation. And now that's changed. So, anyway, I'm disappointed. I understand going in front of the zoning board, it's going to be a problem. I think based on the ethics letter we got in our file, and I think it'll all but kill the project, I think. So, anyway, it was in our packet. From the applicant's wife who works for the town, she saw the opinion. So it was in our packet.
I knew she was, I didn't see.
Yeah, it was very important to read. So that, based on that, that's, so,
I still don't know what that means, can't you?
well, it was in our packet, but anyway.
So what does that mean, whether it's a P or a
Well, if you have a special use permit, yes, you have to go before the zoning board,
okay?
and that's problematic in this particular case.
Well,
So,
I guess this is.
yeah, no, it's
They're
not.
not, are any of them?
Yes, there are.
Oh, okay.
Oh, all right.
They are on.
Yes.
Take care.
Don't worry about it for the moment.
We'll wait until-
But I will make a motion if will help move us along.
Yeah.
And I'll leave off the 762.
If I may address.
Oh, I'm
the
sorry,
board.
hold on.
This is a closed hearing.
I know, but he's for the applicant.
It's a closed hearing
Can you talk?
unless we add.
Oh, is that our discretion?
Well, let me go with the motion and see how this all works.
Okay.
And I think you'll be happy. Move to approve the zoning ordinance text amendment filed by Norbay Yancey Jr. for property located at 999 Main Street, Hope Valley, and identified as Assessor's Plat 27 Lot 102, a neighborhood business zone. The town council agrees with the planning board that the proposed use as an art gallery studio, non-caustic, non-hazardous materials is consistent with the Hopkinton comprehensive plan, with the condition that the Hopkinton's district use table use 761 require a special use permit in the neighborhood business zone, or zones. The town council also agrees art galleries will be removed from use district category 76, and the new category 761 art gallery studio, non-caustic, non-hazardous, is created specifically. And then I've got a district use table, the way they set it up, and it just shows that 761 art gallery studio, non-caustic, non-hazardous materials requires a special use permit in RFR 80. There's an N, it's not permitted in RES 1. It is permitted in neighborhood business but requires a special use permit. In commercial and manufacturing, it's not allowed. And in primary and secondary, it is permitted. The applicant must also adhere to the following conditions. The art gallery is limited to non-caustic, non-hazardous materials such as water-based and acrylic paint. Before the gallery opening, the applicant will reapply to the Hope Valley water line. This requires a positive inspection of the ISDS and the installation of a water meter at the applicant's expense and according to town standards. The applicant will adhere to RIDEM's approved ISDS from May 3rd, 1995, limiting the ISDS daily flow to 45 gallons and designed for a limit of 3 employees. No increase in ISD loading is allowed within the Hope Valley Wastewater Management District.
So what are you proposing?
That's my motion.
Second.
Okay. So, all right, can you explain?
Yeah.
So in neighborhood business is PRS over here.
In neighborhood business, it's required, it's an S.
And so how does that help the applicant?
It helps our town because in all neighborhood businesses, the zoning board would make sure that all of these 1, 2, 3, 4 that I read, out of our zoning district, would make sure it's compatible with the neighborhood uses, would not adversely, I don't want to read it again, would not adversely affect surrounding neighbors' enjoyment. It would be environmentally compatible. So all of those reasons, that's why the planning board or LDRO, and I do agree that a special use permit is necessary in some areas because neighborhood businesses' lots are so very small.
Isn't that one?
When you have a liquor store in that same location and you can pour liquor down the sink, you can pour beer or liquor down, and that has no aquifer permit. That is allowed. You have a business, a small business, because galleries are small businesses, studios are small businesses. Why you would consider them so dangerous they would need a special use permit that you had to make sure they were of good quality when you allow cigarettes and alcohol in that same location without a special use permit is beyond my understanding. One of the complaints about Hopkinton is that we sometimes put so many hurdles in front of any businesses that it is very difficult for anyone to start a business here or continue a business here. I find it appalling that you would take something so minute and so non-caustic and so child-friendly and decide that it, beyond the liquor stores, needs a special use permit, which will allow this particular business to not exist. and we'll keep our liquor store in the middle of town instead of a place to teach children. I find this is beyond any sense of reality and good common sense. And those of you who truly believe that a non-caustic art gallery that you have all been in and you have all attended could cause such problems for a small town and its water system is appalling.
Any comments?
I'd like to ask,
What you said?
I'm interested in Councilor Davis's opinion. I did talk to Al, and he was interested in special use permits. So, the thing is, I'm certainly not an expert. And the way that this is not just for one location. The thing is, when you have an ordinance change, it impacts the whole town. So somewhere down the line, these credentials or these specifications we adopt tonight can be applied to a different situation. This isn't just about downtown Hope Valley where the package store used to be. This is about anywhere in the town. If we would have an application, the town would have an application and we would have to follow it, not just in one location, specific location.
So that anywhere you teach children, or anywhere you teach a nice retired couple how to paint, becomes a special use permit need. I cannot imagine an art gallery, non-caustic, in any place in this town where it would be detrimental to anyone for any reason. Crayons, fabric, glitter. Really? This is,
You never made your point, but that
I'm making it again.
Well, no, we're not finished yet, Sharon. I'm not done talking. So you're all set, Sylvia's all set? You have anything further? Yeah, okay. Barbara, do you have anything further?
I don't think so.
No, I echo Barbara's comments about the non-noxious use of an art studio. Again, the key here is non-caustic. It's water-based paint, fabric, glitter, whatever else. And I've already mentioned what's allowed or permitted in the neighborhood business. It seems more caustic than this particular use. I want to refer everyone, at least the council, to page 19 of the transcript. Member Thompson, her comments in manufacturing, and I agree with that. The 762, which is the caustic use, needs an aquifer protection, whether it's in a primary or secondary zone, and that's fine. Here tonight, this fellow needs to know whether he's going to be allowed to use his property in neighborhood business for this purpose, 761. So I'm sure we want to do that. But we also want to make sure that we do it in such a way it becomes town-wide. Anybody can now do this if you're allowed in a permitted neighborhood business. So again, the special use permit is referenced there, but I left feeling that we were all on the same page in terms of a non-caustic, a permitted use in zone 761 district use table, and obviously that's changed. It's going to be problematic for the applicant, and I'm real disappointed in Sylvia's change of heart.
Yeah, page 19, if you're done.
Yep.
What I said exactly is in manufacturing, and I agree that 762, a caustic one, needs an aquifer protection, whether it's in primary or secondary zone, and that's fine. Here tonight, this fellow needs to know whether he's going to be allowed to use his property in a neighborhood business for this purpose. So I'm sure we do want to do that, but we also want to make sure that we do it in such a way, because it becomes town-wide. Anybody can now do this, and if you allow it in a permitted use in a neighborhood business. So maybe that special use should stay there for that reason, because the zoning board would have to look at whatever proposal is coming in. It makes it harder on the applicant, but I'd like to go along with what they're suggesting, but when it comes to manufacturing, it didn't. So
So you
That's
want to go along
basically
with
it.
what was suggested, which I took as 761,
The
was
manufacturing.
non-caustic, it was okay as a P.
well, I just read that. The hearing is the hearing. A lot of information comes in, and people say different things. And we kind of get a consensus, so to remember exactly everything, no, that's why we refer to this. But what I read, the motion allows it, it's just that it requires a special use permit, that's all.
So I have a question. So does that mean that when the Recreation Department wants to do watercolors or teach a painting class like Richmond Senior Center, that they should get a special use permit because it is so caustic that you don't want it in your water system?
It's not caustic.
It is not caustic,
No, it's
exactly.
not.
But the senior centers and Hopkinton Recreation or the library may offer a painting class. And if they do they need a special use permit?
No. It's ridiculous.
Of course it's
Like-
ridiculous.
Okay. Are you done? Okay. Yeah. Scott, go ahead.
This is, everything I think Barbara Capello seems to say makes sense, but I have a high regard for the opinion of Mr. Diorio. Now, Mr. Diorio is not the supreme deity by any stretch of imagination, but when the chairman of the planning board, who has many years, decades of experience, when he points something out, I tend to put some weight to what he says. It's because of who he is and his experience. So I would normally be inclined to support Barbara's position, but that Mr. Diorio's reservation about it concerned me. And whether or not I maybe pay too much attention to what the planning board says, but they do have some weight with me, and the chairman of the planning board has some weight with me when I make a decision.
What do you personally think, Scott, aside from what Al thinks? What do you think should be allowed in this particular location or town-wide?
The bottom line is,
As a non-caustic
I
use.
think I already answered that question. I think that normally, from what I understand, watercolors is not a problem. But when the chairman of the planning board thinks that there should be a special use permit, he has no personal involvement with this project, and I would be inclined to give weight to his suggestion.
So non-caustic is okay as far as you're concerned? That's what you said?
I said, from my own position, logically, it seems to make sense, but when the chairman of the planning board of many years of experience has reservations about it, then I choose to put great weight in what he has to say. And if I'm criticized for that, so be it.
What does Jim Romaker have to say?
Oh,
It's a hearing.
the hearing's closed, yeah.
The bottom line is this category 761 is only for art galleries. It's not for senior centers, etc. And so if the planning board suggests special use, I support the planning board and I would support the special use. That's all I have to say. And I don't think, I'd rather err on making sure that nothing happens to our water aquifer. So that's why I would
Just
go
an
that route.
FYI, when you have a use change from a liquor store to a studio art gallery, any use change normally, and Jim can confirm this, requires a septic feasibility study because you have a use change. So that's automatic. We can even stipulate for a septic feasibility study. So that takes care of that. It's just, again, we're dealing with non-caustic. I was under the impression when we left our hearing that we were all on the same page with non-caustic. The other stuff was up in the air. But obviously that's not the same thing that's happening tonight, so. It's closed, you cannot talk. So anyway, I don't know if the attorney for the applicant wants to say a few words quick, or.
We should go to we should just vote, yes.
Okay. Yes.
Just vote.
Yeah, there's a motion on the floor and seconded in favor of well, I'm not going to repeat Sylvie's old motion, but it was more for this particular use category S instead of P.
Correct.
There's a motion on the floor and seconded. So I guess all those in favor of district use number 761 as an S and not a P, signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Was that?
You
Yes.
said yes, right?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay. All those not in favor say no.
Aye.
No. So the motion carries. Okay. That's sorry, folks.
Stephen, do you want a copy of this motion? It doesn't matter.
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't
Put it
matter.
in your transcript, and
Okay, all right.
unfortunately, it came out this result.
Number 2, discuss, consider, and vote to grant request for William Landry Esquire to reschedule the following matter regarding the amendment to the Hopkinton Comprehensive Plan, future land use map, and amendment to the Hopkinton zoning ordinance and zoning map filed by Solar DG LLC, a wholly owned subsidiary of Clearway Energy Group, 205 C Street, 7th floor, New York, New York, 10013, and Edward Carapezza, 336 Woodville Road, Hopkinton, Rhode Island, 02833, with Solar DG LLC as lessee for a portion of the property located at 336 Woodville Road, identified as Assessor's Plat 8, Block 36, and RFR 80 zone. This matter was originally scheduled for July 22nd, 2019, at the Charahoe Middle School auditorium. Lisa.
Attorney Landry has contacted me by phone on 2 occasions and has asked for consideration of August 26th, which is a Monday. The Charahoe Middle School is available for that day.
Point of information, this is the project that the planning board deadlocked 2-2?
Correct.
Okay, I'd like to have an opinion from our solicitor whether or not it's in order to present this to town council in light of the fact that it's decided.
Yes, it is. The process is governed by state statute, and when an application for zoning and future land use map amendments are filed with the town, there's a mandatory process which begins with referring it to the planning board for an advisory opinion on whether it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. That process was followed. The planning board voted 2-2. They could not reach a consensus as that. So there is no opinion of the planning board one way or another. So it proceeds to the council as a matter of right. That's by state statute.
Okay, so in other words, if I understand what you just said, that the planning board does not have to make a recommendation pro or con. That's correct.
Well, you can't force them to. It was a 2-2 tie.
Well, I know that, but it doesn't stop it in its tracks.
Not at all. It's advisory. It's only advisory to begin with.
Okay.
So how many for 26?
If it's all right, and if I'll ask a question, and if it's not appropriate, you just tell me, Kevin. What I was going to ask is, when we go to this hearing, can a town council not listen to the proposal and just say, you have to, if you want this, it's got to adhere to the 3%? Because we changed the zoning.
Not exactly.
I mean, the ordinance.
Not exactly the way you just summarized, but yes, in the end, the council can do that. They're entitled to a hearing.
But you have to listen to
The council would have to affirmatively vote to change those minimum or maximum coverage things. And in the absence of that, the new ordinance would apply.
Okay.
So the council, you're right, the council gets to make the call, but you can't
Not here.
say that at the beginning without having a hearing. They're entitled to a hearing by law.
Okay, that's why I asked the question.
Okay, my other question of the solicitor is that Mr. Carol Pezzer apparently been involved in legal issues, and what appropriate could the council use to make a judgment on him, his application and fulfilling the requirements of anything that we
That
can?
probably goes
Talk
to
offline with
your...
that. If you have a question, talk to Kevin offline. We can't be around his legal issues
Yeah,
here.
and that's also personal.
Yeah.
I don't
We're
think
talking
it's-
about 826. How is everybody for 826?
I'm not sure that I am. Is September available?
There are 2 dates in September that are available, 9/23 and 9/30.
I'm I'm hoping to have a vacation at the end of August, so I will be back on the 27th, the 21st and the 27th.
All right, so
We
what's
can
the
do the 23rd.
earliest is 9/23 after that?
Yes. You have a council meeting on August 5th. The 12th is a holiday. August 19th is a council meeting. That leaves the 26th. Then going into September, September has, your council meeting on September 2nd is going to be held on the 3rd because the 2nd is Labor Day. I believe September 9th was a bad date for some individuals. The 16th of September is a council meeting, and that leaves the 23rd and the 30th. And I did not go into October, and the person who normally schedules was not in the office today.
So are you positive you're not going to be around? Is that what you're saying? Okay. So is everybody, what do you guys think about 9/23 as the next?
That's fine.
Is that a Monday?
Yes.
Yeah.
Say it again.
9/20 Yeah, 9/23. Yeah.
Thank you.
CMS?
Yes,
Okay. So that's that.
7 p.m.
Okay. That's carried. All right, number 3. Discuss, consider, and vote to grant request of Robert E. Craven Esquire to reschedule the following matter regarding an amendment to the Hopkinton zoning ordinance and Hopkinton comprehensive plan future land use map filed by Atlantic Solar LLC, 260 West Exchange Street, Providence, Rhode Island, 02903, and Atlantic Control Systems, Inc., 318 Dry Bridge Road, North Kingstown, Rhode Island, 02903. North Kingstown is not 02903, that's 02852. The landowner for property located at 0 Main Street identified as Plat 7, Lot 32, Plat 10, Lot 87, Plat 11, Lot 35, and RFR 80 zone, originally scheduled for hearing on November 19, 2018. No hearing held and continued to January 14, 2019. No hearing held and continued to April 15, 2019. No hearing held and continued to May 28, 2019. No hearing held and continued to June 10, 2019. Hearing held June 10, 2019, and continued to July 8, 2019, as was announced during the advertised and noticed June 10, 2019 Town Council meeting. Lisa?
So you have September 30th, that's another date. And again, I did not go into October.
I'm okay with the 30th. I'd also very much like to see that, and we haven't had a chance to walk that property.
And just so you'll know, I'm going to be in California on the 30th. I'll be in September 30th, the 29th, 30th, and that week of October. I'll be away.
What's the next date after 9/30?
Right.
30 is your regular council meeting is October 7th. Monday the 14th is Columbus Day, that's a holiday. Your regular meeting is October 21st,
10/28.
10/28.
10/28.
Yeah, 10/28.
What about the 15th of October?
10/28.
15th is a Tuesday. I know that with that matter, I believe the applicant's attorney has had difficulty with other dates other than Monday.
So
So
28th.
listed 28th.
10/28.
28, and I don't know if the school's available, but I'm going to hope that it
That's
is.
Monday, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's a Monday.
Mr. President,
Yes.
this actually came up in the public forum. The things that have transpired so far, the public hearing has actually started, as what you just read indicates on the agenda. And it was started on June 10th and then adjourned until, at the time it was announced, July 8th, which was last week. The town canceled that ahead of time. So that doesn't nullify the hearing portion that took place on June 10th, but it is advisable, and I'm recommending to the council that all of the legal abutters who are required notice in the first place get additional individual
Because it's so
notice.
late, yeah.
Well, they just are entitled to get notice again that this is when the hearing's going to be. resumed. So I'd make that at least part of the record. It doesn't necessarily have to be part of the motion, but a caveat that they need to be notified. Again,
By certified mail or by regular?
whatever it is.
A certified mail,
Certified mail.
paid
Yeah.
for, paid for by the
But that does not nullify, we don't have to start all over again.
Right,
Okay.
just a continuance.
But the notice has to start over.
Yep.
In the newspaper as well.
In the newspaper too.
Yeah.
Back.
Yeah.
Okay, so we came to the conclusion, I think, on this particular number 3 for 1028, subject to re-notification of the butters.
Subject to the availability of the school.
We've got plenty of time. Okay, work your magic, Lisa. Don't complicate it. 1028.
I'd like to ask you a question for the solicitor in regard to, is there any limit, and it's probably legally it's not, but is there any limit to the number of postponements or changes people are allowed to have? Because it seems that sometimes there's several, and we never get to hear or make a decision on the thing. There seems to be multiple delays, multiple, I mean, you're talking about several.
You can't tack on the fact that the hearing didn't begin.
Yeah.
You can't now tack on, once the hearing has begun, which it has, you can't start tacking on additional delays. To answer your question specifically, there's nothing in the law that says you can only continue it X number of times, if that's what your question is. It doesn't say
Yeah, but how-
that. So they have a right to complete the hearing.
But suppose they didn't even start the hearing and they keep on changing their dates.
Well, the council at some point can reconvene the public hearing, and they always have the ability to say, if the applicant asks for a continuance, they always have the ability to say, okay, this time, we'll do it this time, but not the next time. You can do that, but that's in your discretion. That's not, you asked me in the context of a legal requirement. There's no legal limit on the continuances, but I think if the council has had enough in any given situation, I'm not implying this applies to this applicant at all, but if the council is frustrated with its ability to do its performance duties, and the situation seems right, the council can do that. That's what happens in court all the time, by the way. So I think, as a legislative body, you can do that. But you have to get the notice to do it. I can't just do it without telling you to think about it.
I think it's relevant issue.
I'd also like to make a request. I spoke to Superintendent Ritchie because the sound system is so poor when we're at CMS. It's very difficult for everyone to hear. And he asked me to call him 5 days in advance so that he can schedule someone who stays, because the person turns everything on and then leaves. And then when we have a problem, we can't get it raised or lowered. So I would just like to talk to you, Lisa, and just say, he did say if we give him 5 days notice, he can get that person to stay and work with us with the microphones for the evening.
Chris, the IT guy sets it up for us.
Right.
That's all. It's our own system, and it's been running fine.
Right.
We have our own system. It's very good.
We bring it in.
Yeah, but it's still very hard for the public to hear and for us to hear.
No, I disagree.
I disagree. I mean,
Okay.
yeah.
I mean, you can certainly
Just one.
let them know, but usually on the request form, it indicates that our IT GIS individual will be in the cell.
And it will, yeah.
Chris does that and he breaks it down.
Yes. So, I'm not sure if you can make the acoustics in that structure any better. Just think that's, the sound goes up.
Start the system, that would be
The system we're bringing in is much better than what was there.
Oh, absolutely.
It's a location.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's also, I think, how people talk into the
You have
microphone.
to get right into it. Yeah.
We just simply are too far away or too close, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Under new business number 1, discuss, consider, and possibly vote to initiate the process to seek an to amend the 1991 waterline agreement between the town of Hopkinton and the town of Richmond to include Plat 27 Lot 135, requested by Councilor Thompson. Sarah?
All right, I sent a memo to the council and to further in your packet. Just to note for the public that it did come to my attention that the original 1991 Hope Valley Richmond Agreement, the Exhibit A section where it listed all the plats and lots that were allowed in the waterline extension, mistakenly did not include plat 27, lot 135. And I'm proposing that this be corrected by amending the agreement to include this lot and request the Richmond Town Council agree. So it's just a mistake. And I provided a little bit of history here about the extension, that it's 4,000 feet long. It goes from the Richmond Hopkinton town line down to Spring Street and Main Street, Hope Valley Square. I was the person that was responsible for getting the water line done, which included many, many different things. One of them, of course, was to, whatever we were proposing, we needed to get permission from Richmond, which they gave us, and then we had the agreement drawn up in Exhibit A. And also, I was asked at the time to very in old school, just highlight or draw in whatever it is where the Hope Valley waterline is and what plats and lots it includes. The map shows that lot 135 should have been in there, and every lot around it, next to it, is included in the waterline. Let's see, what else? Another condition was the establishment of the wastewater management district, which goes to Exhibit A and the map, and the wastewater management district is the same as the Hope Valley waterline. So it was a mistake on my part back in 1991, and I'm just requesting that the council agree to send this correction. So in a sense, I'm asking that we agree that the 1991 waterline amendment be amended to include this lot and send it to Richmond with the explanation, because we're not asking to extend the water line, but I'm asking that a lot be included that should have been included in the first place. That's all.
I have no problem with it. I know that Councilor Thompson did a great deal of work on the water line over a decade ago. More than that, more like 20 years ago. But anyway, 29 years ago, 28 years ago.
When I was just 16, right?
Exactly, when you were a babe in arms. So I think that's a perfectly good addition. I know we've talked about that before in the past, and I have no idea why I just didn't get at it. I think it's perfectly acceptable.
Scott, any questions, concerns with what Sylvia's proposal?
Okay, then I'll move that. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead, Scott.
So,
Frank.
yeah, so, just so everyone knows, it's entirely up to Richmond to grant this request. I've talked to Gary Wright, who's since resigned. They wanted to have a workshop. I talked to Rich Nassane, his person that took over, the president of the council in Richmond. They wanted to have a workshop to discuss any changes. So, you know, we can send this over there, but I believe it's going to most likely result in a workshop to discuss opening up this 1991 agreement. So I'm not going to obviously not vote for it, but I think it's going to be a little bit more entailed or detailed than just sending a letter to them. Great if it works, but from what my discussions are with those guys, they want a workshop and they want to talk about it. So we'll have to just see how it all plays out. But they'll host the workshop. So
And Lisa, whenever they
mentioned August sometime, but
Yeah.
again, we'll see what happens.
right, if they choose to put it on the agenda, I'll go to Richmond in case they have any questions.
And this particular parcel is on the map and not the agreement, so. And plus, again, there's also, if it does work out, there's a set of criteria, Bill, correct if I'm wrong, that once somebody gets on that agreement, they have to do certain things to, like, pay a $100 fee, pump the septic, apply.
Right.
There's
They
a
can
bunch
do the
of
whole
other administrative things or tasks that we have. And they come back before us, right? We pay for the meter, I guess it ends up being approved, right?
We pay for the meter.
I don't think we're gonna continue that. I mean, we can't possibly afford to continue paying for meters. That was
Well,
that's my
that's-
opinion, but I could be wrong.
No,
It's in the ordinance, but the way it's in the ordinance is the town will continue to pay for the meter because it's going to be a special type of meter that is able to be registered locally and compatible with the software that we use, and you just can't put in any meter. That's why we said, I think they're about $250 each. But the
Oh,
owner
they're
of the
not
property, the owner of the property is responsible for the removal and the installation of the meter, which is the pump. Which is probably more expensive
Yeah,
than the meter.
anyway.
And I'd like to make a motion to vote to initiate the process to seek the amendment to the 1991 water line agreement between the town of Hopkinton, town of Richmond to include plat 27, lot 135.
Second.
Okay, motion made second. Any further comments? Folks?
Yes, I have one comment for Kevin. You received this memo that I sent to the council.
Yes.
The second page, the amendment to the agreement, the way it was worded, was that acceptable?
I have your memo here, which paragraph?
It's the second page, and it says amendment to agreement, that's certain agreement by and between the town of Richmond, Rhode Island, and the town of Hopkinton dated July 9, 1991, that it would be amended to allow this line in Exhibit A.
Yeah, but that's,
Yes,
as
so
long as that language is fine, as long once Rich.
So we just send it
approves
over blank to them?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yes, Lisa.
I believe you'd want a letter to go out to the town of Richmond. You want that proposed amendment to the agreement.
Yes.
You just referenced.
In my memo,
Do you want the map that you referenced to go in there as a packet?
we should probably send them
So I
everything,
have a question.
because they're due.
In regards to the map with the outline
Yes.
on it.
Yep.
It has the little dot highlighted in yellow.
Mhm.
The street, it says something street, it's Locustville.
What is this?
It's Locustville Road on our assessors map. I don't know, I can't identify what it states on, it says something street. Something,
Lakeside Drive?
Like, that sounds, no, it's not Lakeside Drive, it's,
So there's a Lakeside Drive extension and a Lakeside
oh, it says,
Drive.
I see what you're saying, it says Locustville Road.
Right, but on the map that has the outline.
And below it.
This map,
Mm-hmm.
you cannot read because the black is over. That, I'm assuming it's Locustville Road. Stuff.
Right, I think
I don't know if that'll be confusing.
No, but she doesn't know what street it is in that bigger map. It just says
she
street.
prefers the small one.
This is Locustville Road. That road on there is Locustville Road.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to make it perfectly clear to them. And who
Yes.
knows if I
Something
can amend that
AKH.
map.
This is,
Doesn't matter.
If you get the lot
The
number.
last two letters are AK, Street.
Okay, so it's not an issue then.
I think it was named something else way back when.
I tried to go back and find what it could have been. I don't know. If it's on the map, on the list of properties, then it should be good.
And everything in Exhibit A, there's no owner, there's no street address, it's just plat and lot. Plat and lot.
Lot
Yep,
It's
yep.
reflected within,
Yeah.
so it's eligible.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. Very good.
Okay, motion made and seconded. Any further comments?
Oh, what was the motion exactly? Just to initiate the process,
Yeah.
basically?
Send
Okay.
send the packet to Richard.
Mhm.
That's good.
Okay. Motion made. Any further comments? Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Next, boards and commissions. Discuss and consider and possibly vote to appoint Emily Chumchenia as an alternate to the planning board.
So moved.
With the spelling as SHU versus CHU.
Oh, I thought that was fine. Oh, okay. Yeah, all right.
SHU, not CHU.
Yes.
With the correct spelling.
A second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you, congratulations.
Congratulations, look forward to it.
Okay. Last public forum.
Joe Moreau, Old Depot Road. I want to talk about the art school a little bit. My daughter was 4 years old and she started an art program until she went to Pratt Institute in New York. She started, as I said, 4 years old, working with watercolor paint. It was really enjoyable to see students there making new friends, learning new talents. My granddaughter is 12 years old. She's taken over for my daughter. My daughter has her own business online as a jewelry designer. I remember those days of taking her to art class. It was never a problem. You know, we talk about bringing business to Hopkinton. They were very upset when they walked out of this meeting. And I don't blame them. We want business in the town, but we put them through hoops over an art studio. We never had chemicals when my daughter went. And I'm sure it's the same now. The people that are teaching him, his wife is an artist. She has some patents out on things that she's designed. She has the best interests of those children that are going to be in that studio. It certainly is going to be better when you look at that rundown liquor store that's there. The other thing, I want to address something that Scott mentioned. There was a 5-page memo that was given on June 25th. It was dated. And it was an email also to the town council members. We can agree to disagree on this, Frank. When you look at the background of a landowner, it's public record. It's not a personal record, it's public record. When there's court cases involved, when there's DEM fines involved, when there's so many issues in other towns as well as this town, there's current fines on that property, it's public record. And my intent of doing that, along with Eric, was hopefully to share that information, and I would hope that you would take the time to read the 5 pages, to share that information before we get in these long, drawn-out processes with this solar. Again, I don't know why you spent all the time, and Jim Lanfear and everyone else that attended the meetings, on the solar ordinances. It's clear there's a 3%, and we're going through these whole hoops again on this project with a developer that has some serious issues. There's a dam there that was deemed by the DEM as a significant hazard. I don't know if you read it. Significant hazard. And we're looking at this problem. It's public record in my opinion.
Good. Anyone else? Okay, motion to adjourn.
Mr. President, I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn in memory of the oldest member of the Narragansett Elevator, Doug, who recently deceased.
A second.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.